This is a story about the power of writing, or more importantly, rewriting. It was the spring of 2007, and then Captain Joe Byerly had been serving in Iraq for a couple of weeks.
I'm a platoon leader. We had just moved our strikers from Balad, which was a very nice forward operating base. And we drive across, it was like an hour and a half drive to Warhorse, which was this camp in Diyala province.
Byerly had trained for more than a year, if not his entire life, for his first deployment. And so far, things had gone smoothly.
I remember we parked our strikers and we're walking around the fob to catch our bearings. And right there in front of us is this striker from another brigade that had been brought in, completely burnt down to the wheels. It had been hit by a EFP. And I remember thinking, like, this is real now. This is combat. All the training, all the pretend that I had been doing with my soldiers for the last year and a half is now real.
That image started to haunt Byerly.
And I actually wrote my wife a letter the day or two after that and told her that I'd made the decision to get out of the Army as soon as this deployment was up.
As the days and months went by and his missions unfolded, Byerly continued to write to his wife. But slowly, the letters stopped being about his fears. Instead, they focused on how his deployment was inspiring him.
That deployment, I felt so alive for the next 15 months. The stuff that we were doing, the people that we were helping, just the growth that each of us had in that platoon over the course of our time. And we actually got to see change while we were there.
Now, almost 2 decades later, he realizes it was a time that changed the course of his entire life.
I just think about that if I would have gotten out when it was tough, I wouldn't be standing here, had the experiences that I've had, lived the life that I've led, and been given the gifts that I've been given.
The first draft of Byerly's deployment told a negative story. But by staying strong and being open-minded, he was eventually able to rewrite that story into a positive one. The theme of storytelling and the written word remains important to Byerly today, as he has channeled his 20 years of Army service into the successful leadership platform From the Green Notebook. The website and podcast allow military and civilian decision makers to share and cultivate lessons learned. In today's episode, our hosts sit down with Lieutenant Colonel Joe Byerly to discuss key lessons learned in his Army career, how From the Green Notebook has inspired leaders, and how it all began with a bit of underage drinking. I'm Carrie Varuhaikis, and this is Army Matters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Army Matters. I'm your co-host, Sergeant of the Army retired Dan Dailey. And you know who's with me.
Your best buddy, your only friend in AUSA, Lieutenant General retired Leslie C. Smith. How are you, Dan?
Good. You're my only friend?
Today, right now, because we're on this podcast together.
But I thought I had more than just one friend here at AUSA.
You do. You have more than one friend. But right now, you're my only friend because we're on the podcast together.
Okay.
My only friend. You remember those pictures we took yesterday? Who did you take them with?
My only friend?
Exactly. What are we here for anyway, man?
Well, I was explaining.
Okay.
We're going to get back to what we normally do.
What's that?
And I ask you questions. All right, here we go.
I'm coming
ready?
back to you. Yes.
Which birthday from your childhood do you remember the most? Got you thinking. I got the
thinking cap. That's right. Probably 13 years old. Because I think around that same time, that was the same time Hank Aaron hit his home run that year. It was just some other things.
Well, why was it special? What? No, wait.
What made it special?
Yeah.
Because it's, and we have this tradition in our house now. You get your special meal made on your birthday. You know what my special meal used to be?
What's that?
Fried chicken, white rice, and English peas.
English peas. I don't know if I've had English peas.
Yeah, green peas.
I like dirty rice. Black.
Dirty rice. Yeah, you're from Pennsylvania. You didn't figure out about dirty rice till you came in the Army.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't even know what grits were till I came in the Army.
What's that? What do you mean, cream of wheat?
Went through the basic training line. I'm like, what is that?
Hey, just like to say, eat it. You just eat everything. It's like, okay. What about you?
Right. My 16th birthday.
Okay. Did you get a car at 16?
I did.
Oh, man. That's pretty nice.
I bought it myself. I bought a used Opel GT and fixed it up before I was 16. And as soon as I turned 16, I got my driver's license because I had to work. So I had to drive to work and to and from. And it was that was my favorite birthday.
Opel GT.
Yeah, Opel GT.
Yeah. Okay, what's the next one?
Celeste, do you still get that special meal on your birthday even today?
Yes, I do. Anita has a special plate at home that says your special day, and then you get your special meal on that day.
Oh my God!
So what about you? What about traditions you like to follow on your birthday now?
Well, Holly does the same thing for me. She always cooks me one of my favorite meals.
Oh, what's your favorite meal?
I have several actually.
Give me one.
Smoked pizza.
What?
Smoked pizza.
What's smoked pizza?
So you make a pizza and then you put it in the smoker.
What?
Yeah, it's really good.
Smoker?
Really good.
How long does it take to cook that?
You turn a smoker up to 325.
I know, but
it doesn't take that long.
Okay, so does it cook it all around 360?
Oh yeah, cooks it all around. You get then you get the smoke flavor in it. So Les, the reason why we're talking about birthday traditions is because this year AUSA is going to celebrate its 75th anniversary on 5 July.
That's pretty cool.
And our guest is a 20-year Army vet and a writer who focuses on celebrating big events like birthdays.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what you can do to help yourself on a day-to-day basis, like journaling.
Yeah. Did you journal?
I've never been good at it.
Yeah. I started, but it's so hard. And then I started talking about people and I said, I can't put that in a journal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we welcome to the show?
Let's do it.
Lieutenant Colonel Joe Byerly, welcome to Army Matters.
Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And like I was telling you before we started, I don't listen to podcasts, but when I listen to Army Matters, I felt like I was doing a cable access television show and you guys were doing like the CBS evening news or like the Today Show or something.
Why?
It is really well done.
Yeah. There was a time when we were on public access as well. It took us a while to get here and we're still working hard.
Yeah, we're still working out. We want to get some of your guests, man.
Yeah. I checked your lineup. You had the chief on there?
Yeah.
The chief. Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, we're going to talk about your podcast. We're going to talk about your Army career. But before we do any of that, I need to ask you a very important question. Now, you often talk about the importance of journaling and how it can even help you win an argument with your spouse. I got to hear this.
I'm going to start off. I have to say this before I'm going to say anything else, is that you will win the argument, but you will lose the marriage.
Okay? You'll lose the war. That's right.
You'll lose the war. Yeah. So have you guys ever done this where you're having a conversation with your spouse and you're like, hey, remember when this happened? Or they like, remember when this happened? And they're like, no, it didn't. And I'm like, yeah. Remember? And I start like trying to jog the memory, like, no, it didn't. Well, if you're a journaler, you can go run, get the journal, whether it's just in a casual conversation or in the heat of the fight, and just open to the page and scroll down with, trace it down with your finger and then just repeat back what actually happened on that date.
So you're writing stuff down every day?
Every day. Yeah.
Every day. And how much do you write in a journal per day?
I may write a page and, journals, it's not that big.
Yeah. And what would be your typical day of journaling? Or is that the correct terminology?
Yeah. It's I start off Dear Diary today. I went on this podcast. No, I will. What I'll do is I try to have a format for it. It doesn't always happen this way, but I try to stick to this. But one, it'll be how many when I woke up and how much sleep I got. I'll track the number of steps that I did for that day. And as a leader, what I learned is that when you have a high step count, that means you're actually getting out of the office.
That's right.
And talking to people. If it's a low step count, that means you were hanging out in Outlook too much. So I'll write that down. I just want to make sure that I'm like staying physically active, because it's one thing to, maybe get like 4,000 or 5,000 steps. It's another thing to actually have to write that down and be like, man, you're not moving. Or I'll write a workout down.
Yeah. So more importantly, then what's the response of your wife when you prove her wrong?
Oh, it never goes well. It never goes well. And sometimes the best ones are when you're like, oh yeah. And then you open the page and you look down and you realize you were wrong.
You were right, dear.
Yeah. So I'll write those things. I'll kind of write like a summary of my day. I'll write some key decisions I made, because I've learned that when you write down your decision, you can go back 6-7 months from now and look back and see if was that a good decision or not. Yeah. And that's really cool to go back and look.
So Joe, I need to know, what is the most interesting thing you've learned about yourself through journaling?
I think it sounds like no duh, but like I recognize that autonomy is really important to me. Like I don't like to be told what to do. And it's funny, but like it was that kind of realization along with some other things where you realize like, hey, maybe I'm at a point in my life where I'm not doing myself justice or the Army justice by continuing on this career path. Maybe it's time to retire and do something different, because I don't like being told what to do. I don't like having a schedule handed to me.
So you don't want to work? So you don't want to work at all?
Yeah, he wants to work for himself.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing now, is that the stuff that I do, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm getting paid to do my hobby now.
Right.
That's the best job in the world.
Yeah.
Let's transition about your call to service and your Army career. I got to know about this one. Talk to us about an underage drinking party and then how that led to you enlisting in the Army. What did you do?
Be careful. What's the statute of limitations on underage drinking?
Yeah.
As long as he didn't do anything strange, I think it's okay. Remember, he used to be the Sergeant Major in the Army, and I used to be the Inspector General. So we always know how to ask the question.
We're inherently suspicious.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. So I was into my junior year of high school, and we were at this party, and this guy that had just graduated Marine Corps basic training, and he comes back to this party. He looks completely different. Hair looks like SMA Dailey's does right now. Guy had gone from being out of shape to in shape. And I just remember everybody talking to him, the respect that was shown him, and everybody thought it was the coolest thing. And so the next morning, we get up, we go drop one of my buddies off at work, but we're like waiting for this place to open in the strip mall. So we're all sitting in the car, and I see the Marine recruiting station right there, and they're open. So I say, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I talked to the guy, I said, I want to join. I took a test. I think it was the ASFAB, and he comes to my house in his blues, looking really good, talks to my parents about all the opportunities. And then my parents tell me that, hey, you're 17. We're not going to sign this document. And so I was mad, I was angry, and they're like, you're going to go to college. All of a sudden, like my thought process switches. Now I want to go to an academy. So I applied to West Point, applied to the Naval Academy. I didn't have the grades. I didn't have the extracurricular activities. And so I got this brochure in the mail from what was then North Georgia College and State University. Now it's University of North Georgia. I throw it away. And my mom goes and gets it out of the trash can. And so I remember I went to this dinner. It was like a recruiting dinner. There was a guy named Captain Joe Girard who was there.
Yeah, I know Joe. I know Joe well.
Yeah. Now he ended up becoming the tag for the state of Georgia.
Yeah.
His brother.
I know him. I know both of them.
Twins. Jamie just retired as a 3-star.
Yeah.
And so Joe hosted the dinner. I thought it was awesome. Ended up going to North Georgia. I got into the platoon leader program for the Marine Corps. I went to OCS in Quantico after my freshman year of college. They were only offering, I think, like $600 a semester. And I came back, was ready to sign a contract and become a Marine in 3 years. And then my ROTC instructor was like, hey, we have a 3-year scholarship. We'll give you, I think it was like $150 a month. And I was like, $150? Sold. And
that's a great deal.
That is a great deal. Well, $150 back then, that was worth what? $2,000 in today's money.
Yeah. Back in the day. So that ended up starting this Army path for me.
Wow.
Nice.
So your grandfather and your uncle were both Marines. So I could see where the inspiration would come from. But what did you learn from their experiences growing up, and how did that influence and affect your life?
I think for my grandfather, he was an infantry grunt, fought on Iwo Jima and a couple other of the island hopping campaigns. And I remember like he wore that identity for the rest of his life.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember he talked about it a lot. And I think I interviewed him for like a 6th grade project. And he was very proud of his service. And I just remember that he was always a fighter. And then my uncle was a C-130 pilot in the Marine Corps. And I just remember always going to their house to visit. And there was always a cookout. The kids were super close because they were constantly moving around. And I just thought that was like the coolest lifestyle when I was, 12, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah. Wow. And then you made it a 20-year career.
Right.
Talk to us about, first duty station, what significance of commanding a company and all those things.
So actually first duty station was very interesting. So my senior year of college, the branch manager calls me after I had been assigned armor and goes, hey, we got this great deal. And now I think the three of us know that if a branch manager calls you and says great deal, it's like the opposite.
It's not.
of a great deal.
It's not.
So he says, hey, we're trying this new program. It's a pilot program called Lieutenants to Knox. And what you'll do is you'll be a basic training XO right out of OBC. We'll give you any school you want, and you'll get duty location of choice. So I said, yes, I'll do it. And so I get to Knox. I get there for my officer basic course. And at some point, the branch manager switches out with another branch manager. And I don't know what their note-taking system was.
I know where this is going.
But all of a sudden, all those promises were no more. And so I lost airborne school. And I'd been in the pre-ranger program the entire time. So I was getting up early every morning and doing the extra things to be ready for ranger school. I lost that. And so then next thing you know, I'm a basic training XO. And that became actually probably one of the most important assignments I ever had for two reasons. One is I didn't have any peers. I didn't have any other second lieutenants to be idiots with. All of my peers were lieutenants who had just come back from the invasion. All the troop commanders were on their second, most of them were on their second command from the invasion force. And all my NCOs had just come back from Iraq. So I got raised by 7 drill sergeants in this environment, and they did not hold back any punches.
Oh no.
It was terrible. If I showed up for a training event, they needed to see my permission slip from my parents that allowed me to be there that day. And so I really had to fight to get respect. And eventually I think I earned it. And then the second thing was my troop commander. He was a platoon leader under Lieutenant Colonel H.R. McMaster. And so when I came in there, I was just told like, hey, I'm going to like expands your horizon. So, like I learned about races. I never run like 5Ks or half marathons or anything like that. So he introduced me to those. We would take our wives to like off-Broadway plays just for culture. We'd take our wives out to like very nice dinners. I hadn't gone, like Red Lobster at the time was my idea of like nice. And so those, between the drill sergeants, the NCOs, and that captain, I think I was set up for success. When I finally did get my duty station of choice, which was 4th Squadron, 2nd Cavalry Regiment at Fort Lewis, Washington.
Nice.
The same squadron I ended up commanding 19 years later.
Right. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What was one of the toughest times you had in your Army career?
I think that's, things that happen within the context of those deployments were pretty tough. I lost an officer while I was in command of 4-2. That was really tough. Not only because of, anytime you lose a life in a unit, but as a squadron commander, I was very close with my junior officers, especially the ones who were sitting on staff before going down to take a platoon. And this one was very promising. It already worked out that, hey, she's going to be a platoon leader. She's going to be an executive officer after that. Like I already knew that she was going to do well and go on. And it was so unexpected and such a freak accident that not only was I having to deal with the emotions I had during that event, but then also leading the organization through it. And we were only weeks away from our CTC rotation.
Wow.
So, that on top of it, how
so this is before deployment.
So in command, I was in command in Germany. So there
Right.
we weren't deploying.
Right.
We were doing CTC rotations and then, joint and exercises with our allies and partners. So this was right before a CTC rotation. So this was, it was super tough. So, I mean, like that was one that comes to mind.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about learning from our mistakes. What would you say, Joe, is your biggest mistake you made in your Army career? And what did you learn from it?
Oh, man. So I remember this, and we're good, SMA, on the statute of limitations, right?
On most things. We'll determine whether or not.
It depends.
We'll determine whether or not it's in the stat. If it's good, we'll cut it out. If it's not good,
No,
right.
I remember being a platoon leader, and it was we were at Yakima Training Center. I remember we were doing a training event, and I wasn't taking my platoon sergeant wasn't taking equipment accountability serious.
Well, this is bad.
Yeah.
Bad lieutenant.
Yeah.
We're covering our faces on the podcast, guys, so we don't want to see it. Go
I
ahead.
took it extremely serious when I was a platoon sergeant.
Yeah. And so my platoon sergeant didn't. And I remember like the way we did equipment accountability was like, SMA, you good? General Smith, you good? Thumbs up, we good. All right, let's go. And so that's what we did. We get back, and I remember it was the day before Thanksgiving. And you guys are making the faces again.
It's always the worst things happen the day you're about to go on vacation.
So we end up like the guys come to me and they're like, "Hey, sir, we can't find a radio." And I was like, "What?" And so we're like going through dumpsters, we're going through vehicles, we're doing sworn statements. People are missing flights, and I am just feeling sick to my stomach. And so flash forward, we're in Iraq. I'm on my 3rd platoon sergeant at this point. And he like drops his coffee mug behind the thing in the striker, and the platoon sergeant striker goes down and pulls out a radio that had like fallen back there. And so, ever since then, like I grew up very quickly, and, I told that story so many times throughout my career, and I was always doing hands-on sensitive items checks. I was making sure that the NCOs understood why we do them, why the officers understood why we did them. And so equipment accountability after that became super important to me. But sometimes I feel like I had to touch the proverbial army stove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that as a member of AUSA, you have access to many benefits? From car rental to entertainment discounts, the opportunities are ample. Visit us online at ausa.org/benefits to learn more.
Shape the future of Army land power in Europe at AUSA's newest gold standard event, Land Euro. Join us July 16th through the 17th in Wiesbaden, Germany, the hub for U.S. Army Europe and Africa. Connect with top military, industry, and government leaders. Learn more and register today at ausa.org/Land Euro.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Army Matters. Now, Joe, help me out here, brother. Who was Gerhard Scheinhurst? And how did he start off your writing career?
Yeah, so in 2013, I had the opportunity to work for Major General H.R. McMaster, building the Maneuver Leader Self-Study Program. And
I remember it well.
yeah, and it was amazing. Like, I mean, the idea was that any maneuver leader throughout their career could go to this website, find a topic, figure out what books to read, what podcasts to listen to, read some articles on the subject, and educate themselves. So I'm working on them with this. And, one of the books he has me read is On War by Clausewitz. And he was even like, hey, read this translation of it. So I'm reading that. And then through that, I learned that Clausewitz, when he was in school, was like struggling with his studies. He wasn't doing great. And his professor, Gerhard Scharnhorst, was really helping him along. And he would pull these students together. They would do map exercises. They would do reading assignments. And so there was a book by Edward White that was published a long time ago called The Enlightened Soldier. And it was about Scharnhorst and his legacy. And all those junior officers that Scharnhorst had intellectually developed went on to be chief of staff of the Prussian military and through the unification of Prussia in the late 1800s. But I remember like learning about this guy and just becoming fascinated with him. And so we had so much issues starting this Maneuver Leader Self-Study Program. And I questioned whether or not we were going to be able to keep it going. And so right after that is when I started my blog, which was called An Enlightened Soldier. And originally, I was so scared as a maneuver leader to write and share it with people because I didn't want to be seen as intellectual that I didn't put my name on it. And that was like a nom de guerre. But then when I finally started telling people I had a blog and it's called An Enlightened Soldier, one, that sounds really pretentious. And two, then you had to go into like a 5-minute history lesson on where this came from. And for like a branding perspective, that's not good at all. And so I was at Navy ILE and just kicking around ideas and just thought, hey, why don't I call it From the Green Note? Why don't I call it The Green Notebook? And then somebody had already grabbed that. So I just put From in front of it. And then I started writing. My buddies at school started asking if they could post articles on there. And then people started writing me that I didn't even know, asking if they could post articles. And then next thing you know, it was no longer my personal blog. And it's funny, like that inspiration of Scharnhorst educating an army ended up being a bunch of people educating each other on this platform.
That's good.
Do you remember the very first piece of writing that you published?
Yeah, so I got two stories, SMA. I'll tell you about the piece I didn't publish. And it was called An Open Letter to My Battalion Commander. And it was a list of observations of things that piss me off about lieutenant colonels. Why are you shaking your head, sir?
This is your manifesto. What rank were you? What rank?
Angry captain.
Angry
That's your
captain.
rank.
There you go.
No, it's until you became one yourself. So go ahead.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
go ahead.
Terrible guys at battalion.
Yeah, exactly. So it was all the things that bothered me. It was like, and it wasn't just a single battalion commander. It was all these observations over the years of things that I thought I could do better. And interesting enough, I pulled out that old laptop before I took command and reread that post that I never published, just to make sure that I didn't do any of those things. And what I found was a lot of that stuff that I thought was so dumb is actually really necessary for good order and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that you don't understand why, because you don't have the perspective at the captain level that you eventually develop once you've been around long enough.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So talk to us about your podcast. Who's the most interesting guest you've had on there? And by the way, why weren't we the first ones you invited onto the show?
No, I don't even think you guys had a podcast yet.
What's that got to do with anything?
Yeah, but
Dan?
what year did you start it though?
Yeah.
That doesn't just because we didn't have. You could have still asked us. You could have. and
come
and
on,
let's
bro.
just for the record for our listeners out there, he still has not invited us to be on this
no,
podcast.
I didn't want to go there. You did.
I have. You guys are coming on at some point. You are.
Oh, some point.
Oh, yeah.
Your
Check-
schedules
checks
have
in
to
the mail.
schedule it. Okay.
No, no.
I got it.
Checks in
Yeah.
the mail.
He did say it.
That was the smoothest
pretty smooth.
redirect in the.
Yeah, it's happening.
in the
Yeah.
It's like
community.
the Clark Kent.
Can I answer the question, SMA?
Yes, please.
You can answer it. Yeah,
Go
just-
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Talk to us about From the Green Notebook.
So, okay, I'm going to ask you guys a question first. Have either of you ever watched professional wrestling?
Yes.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Like
who's
fans?
Who's your favorite wrestler?
I'm not a fan, but I like
Fan?
John Cena just because I met him a lot of times and he went
Okay.
over Iraq with me. And
That's a good name drop. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I watched it all through high school.
Yeah.
I watched WCW. I was a huge fan. And so I was, it was during, I got COVID and I was watching this documentary on Diamond Dallas Page about how he came back from this injury through yoga and then ended up helping other guys who'd been injured bring put their lives back together. And so I reached out to his people and he said yes. And so I got to interview Diamond Dallas Page, and like the inner like 14, 15-year-old
Kid,
within me was like, yeah, I was so excited. And then afterwards, this was really cool. I said, hey, my son's trying out for football. Would you mind talking to him a little bit? And so, my son got this pep talk from this WWE Hall of Famer on, putting in the work and all this stuff. It was a really cool guest.
So, and then finally, we know that you read a lot. You said that several times throughout the interview. And what's your single most favorite book on leadership?
Oh, man. The one that stands out the most, I think, is Gates of Fire. Have y'all read that one?
Long time ago.
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Oh, man, SMA. You got to read it. It'll change.
They got a movie out about it? I could watch a movie. I'm not
So-
a big reader. And I know it's a downfall. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Just not a big reader.
So the
Yeah.
book actually influenced the graphic novel 300, which became the movie.
300?
300, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Then why don't you say that first?
Because it's totally different. It's totally different, SMA. But yeah, I think that one, and it did there's a couple different threads on that. One, there's a scene where they come back from battle, and the way the Spartans would do it is they would have these like bracelets that they wore. They were like twigs that were kind of interlocked together, and it had their name inscribed on each set of the twigs. And they would hold one with them, and they would drop the other one in a basket right before they go into combat. And so basically the S1 of the unit would, after the battle was over, would read off these halves of the bracelet, and whichever ones were left in the basket were the guys that were missing in action or who had been killed. And that's how they were able to keep track of their dead. But there's a scene from the book where the guys are connecting their bracelets back together, and they're just overcome with emotion. They're taking a knee. And Leonidas, the king of the Spartans, gives a speech, and he's like, the reason why you are feeling overwhelmed right now is that side of you where you hold your kids tightly, whether you sing loud at church, where you love your wife, that's the side of you that you just put back in that basket. The bracelet that you kept with you is that side of you that allows you to go into battle and slay another man. And he goes, and if you didn't separate those two bracelets, then you wouldn't be able to do what you just did here today. And so by you putting that back together, you were taking those both sides of your life and bringing them back together. And that's why you see these like battle-hardened veterans right now with like tears in their eyes. And so it's this speech he gives.
Yeah.
And I hadn't deployed yet. And so that was the mindset that I went into my deployment with, was that I would have to separate the guy that was back here, CONUS, with the guy that was going forward, because I knew things were going to be asked of me that I would never do back home. So super influential. And then there's things in that book about training, about preparing for combat. And what's really interesting is I really related to this one figure in the book, and I'll mess his name up, but Dainiki's, I think, is his name. And he's like the platoon leader, company commander. He's not the king. And the king in the book, I went and reread it with my battalion when I was a commander. Matter of fact, oh man, SMA. So this is my copy that I read in 2005.
That was a little pre-staged for me. The way how it was just right there, available.
No,
Wow.
I know.
How long have you been on this, prepping for this podcast? Probably week and a half?
As long as you have 5 minutes. And so, anyways, but this book, I reread it as a battalion commander, with my leaders, and I no longer related to that younger Spartan. I now related to Leonidas.
Well, Joe, it was great to have you on the show, and there's so much more we could talk about. But we can talk about that when we are guests on your show, maybe someday, if we're good enough. If we're good enough, when we meet the bar.
That'd be good. Hey, I'm looking forward to doing the episode with Leslie, and in the future, I think it'll be a really good thing, and you're gonna love it. SMA, when you listen to it, you're gonna.
Hey, I don't want to talk about reading and writing, though. Let's talk about something cool, right? Let's talk about something cool.
Thanks, Jeff. We appreciate you, man. We're proud of you.
Know a sharp Army leader who should be shaping our conversations? Tell them to check out the Harding Fellowship. Graduate School, Journal Editor, Real Impact. Learn more at lineofdeparture.army.mil/Harding. To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Dailey, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Anthony Del Call is the producer and writer, and Andy Bosnack is the supervising sound editor. Ellen Toner is the content editor. Unzinga Curry is the executive producer, and the senior producers are Carrie Barrow-Heckes and LaSharon Duncan. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Wreath. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. I'm LaSharon Duncan. Hope you have a great Army Day. Hooah!